We're going to go over the clips from the police news conference where they discuss the arrest of Richard Allen in the Delphi murders. We're also going to go over the stack of evidence against Kegan Kline. This either suggests another shoe is about to drop or that much of the evidence against Kline was false. We have to keep in mind that though some of the most damning evidence against Kline was extremely damaging, there was always the possibility that not all of that evidence was true. Much of that evidence was taken from a transcript said to be of the police interview of Kline, a transcript that podcasters found posted on an official site. News sources verified that transcript, but police were cagey about their wording and never actually confirmed the transcript was real. This leaves the possibility that the police used the podcast to inject something false into the public, perhaps hoping to smoke out the killer with a reaction. If one accepts the information out there on Kline that seemed credible, it's hard to see him not involved. And police invested enormous resources just last month to search a river near Kline's home. But if the transcript turns out to be not credible, wow, that really opens up another can of worms. I watched this press conference knowing that most of the questions would remain. Police really can't reveal things like the evidence they have or how they obtained it, not until the trial anyways. So what I was looking for was simply a sense. Did it feel like they believed they got their man and there are no other suspects? Or did it feel like this was just a first step and there were more shoes to drop? I was open to both possibilities. I still am. The evidence against Kline, which seems credible since there was a transcript found online at official sources, strongly suggests his involvement. However, the suspect arrested, Richard Allen, seems to completely fit the profile of the lone killer who lived locally and acted alone. Allen is 50 years old, married with an adult daughter. I want to mention here that these two women are also victims in all probability. And it's a tragedy that has ruined their lives now too. Allen fits the profile of someone who perfectly blended into the community. He worked as a pharmacy tech at the local CVS. In this position, his face would be known by many members of the community. He lived only a mile and a half from the bridge. The river that runs under the bridge runs through his backyard. Based on Facebook photos on his wife's page, he spent a lot of time outdoors. In fact, one photo shows his daughter actually sitting on the Monon High Bridge. Eerily, his daughter looks very much like an adult version of Libby. Allen was a very short man, only 5'4". Bridgeman was said to be, I believe, between 5'6" and 5'9", still short. Police had released 2 sketches of their suspect based on witness accounts. The first sketch appeared to be a man in his 40s. Oddly, the second sketch, released 2 years later, seemed to be a man in his 20s. Police then said it was the same man, that somehow both sketches would encompass him. This made no sense at the time, but oddly, Richard Allen seems to match both sketches. He would have been 44 years old at the time, but he has very young skin. In their press conference explaining the arrest of Allen, the police emphasized that the public should still send in any tips, whether about Allen or someone else. So it is possible others are involved. My sense of it was that this was just due diligence on their part. For example, there could be others who helped Allen construct a false alibi or destroy evidence. It was my sense that police feel confident that they got their guy. Let's take a look at some of the evidence against Kline and see where it might now fit. A friend of mine, Dave, is a former federal law enforcement officer. He has a supremely logical mind and takes a rigorous approach to evidence. He's followed the case closely since the beginning. Dave worked undercover for years, so it's not easy to pull the wool over his eyes. We were going over the case the day before the arrest. Dave listed all the evidence against Kline. I was going through a process of trying to verify all of this when the news of the arrest broke. The evidence against Kline was compelling, if it was credible. But what was causing me to hesitate to accept the case against Kline was this. Assuming investigators have all of Libby and Abby's communications for that day, and I think they do, then they would know if Libby arranged to meet someone at the bridge at that time, or if the girls had posted somewhere that they were going to the bridge. Police have not said what is in any of these communications, but my sense has been that there was no communication about meeting someone or about the fact that they were going there that day. In fact, early on, police seemed to be moving away from the whole Snapchat catfishing theory. We know Kline created the character Anthony Shots to catfish underage girls. We know he used Shots to communicate with Libby. We know Libby's sister, Kelsey, communicated with Shots, presumably Kline, though possibly someone else using the account, while the search of the girls was underway. Yet Kelsey seemed to be in the dark about who the killer was. Kelsey does a lot of interviews and even her own podcasts, and I haven't seen her pointing a finger at Kline. If Kline had discussed the girls going to the bridge that day and at that time, I would assume Kelsey would have been fingering him as the killer. Maybe the police would have to be cautious, but not Kelsey. So my sense has been that the police believed, and Kelsey believed all along, that the killer was just an opportunistic predator, that the girls were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Last spring, the podcast The Murder Sheet uncovered what was said to be a transcript from a police interview with Kline. News sources reporting the story also saw the transcript. It was later pulled down. According to the news sources about that transcript, in Kline's interview with the police in 2020, he admitted to using the Anthony Shots profile on social media and admitted talking to Libby. Police said Kline's device logged into the Anthony Shots Snapchat account the day the girls were killed. Police also accused Kline of communicating with Libby on that day that they were killed. Again, this was all according to the supposed transcript. Kline described it as coincidence that I happened to talk to her. At one point, Kline told police of Libby, "I don't remember talking to her really. I didn't even know who she really was until after I saw it on the news." Police said the Anthony Shots account told someone online about Libby. "I was supposed to meet that girl," it said, "but she never showed up." But Kline said in the interview he never would have met with Libby in person. One of the co-hosts of the Murder Sheet podcast, attorney Kegan Kline, told ABC News that another part of the police transcript that stood out to him was how police revealed that in studying the messages sent from the Anthony Shots account, they see differences in the languages and phrasing choices that make it apparent to the police that at least two different people were accessing that account and using it to send messages to underage girls. Greenlee told ABC News at one point in the interrogation, the police officer tells Kegan Kline, "We do not believe you are the one that committed these murders." But then they pointed out that Kegan Kline had taken a polygraph test where he was asked, "Do you know who committed these murders?" And that was the point where he supposedly failed the exam. Indiana State Police would not confirm that Abby or Libby communicated with Anthony Shots. Doug Carter told ABC News at the time that the Anthony Shots profile, quote, "generated a tremendous number of leads for us, and that's as far as I can go." The Indiana State Police addressed this supposed transcript with very odd language, saying, "We are aware the Murder Sheet has released a transcript. The information that was released did not come from the Indiana State Police nor the Delphi Double Homicide Task Force. This is still an ongoing investigation." Does that mean the transcript came from another police agency? I don't think so. All of those agencies were part of the task force. Were the police affirming or denying the validity of the transcript? If the transcript was valid, why not say so? So we're left to consider the possibility that the transcript was not valid. Could the police inject something like that into the public realm in order to try to provoke a response from the actual killer? In other words, did they use the podcast for this purpose? Until police confirm any of this, we just don't know. Did Kline really communicate with Libby the day of the murders? Did he arrange to meet her at some point and she didn't show up? I'm sure Richard Allen's lawyers will be keen to know. Let's look at an interview Kline did from prison. I think it was last year that he did this.
"I feel like I'm being harassed completely."
Did you have anything to do with the murders of Abby or Libby?
Not at all, and I've gave up my DNA, a hair follicle test. I've done everything they wanted me to.
Tell me about Anthony Shots. Why did you create that profile?
I don't really know. I was just lonely, you know what I mean? Just talking to people. I don't know why I did it, really.
And were you ever trying to meet these girls in real life that you were talking
No.
to?
No, never.
So why do you think investigators are putting so much focus on you right now?
I have not a clue. I think it's because they said I was the last person to talk to her, is what they've told me.
And then she shows up at the bridge and they're abducted and later found dead.
Right.
And that was not you.
No, 100% no.
Do you think you're going to be charged with anything related to Abby and Libby's murder?
No, I don't.
So the state police haven't threatened that?
No.
So Kline says that police say Schatz was the last person to talk to her. He doesn't admit to talking to her himself. He says he doesn't remember ever talking. It's interesting to watch this interview. In my opinion, you can tell two spots where he lies. The first is when asked why he created Anthony Schatz.
Tell me about Anthony Schatz. Why did you create that profile?
I don't really know. I was just lonely, you know what I mean? Just talking to people. I don't know why I did it, really.
His voice is weaker, less decisive. He says it was because he was lonely. But he's charged with soliciting pics and videos from these girls. 20 such videos were found on his computer. So we know he's not being forthcoming here. When he's asked whether he thinks he'll be charged with anything related to the murders, he weakly says no.
Do you think you're going to be charged with anything related to Abby and Libby's murder?
No, I don't.
So the state police haven't threatened that?
No.
We can compare this to other times he answered no. Kline, of course, could not answer confidently that he wouldn't be charged with something related because he can't really know what the prosecution will do. That doesn't mean Kline was involved. It just gives us a good baseline to see his response where he says no, but he isn't really sure. When asked if he had anything to do with the murders by comparison, his reply is quick and decisive.
Completely.
Did you have anything to do with the murders of Abby or Libby?
Not at all, and I've gave up my DNA, a hair follicle test. I've done everything they wanted me to.
And that was not you?
No, 100% no.
When asked why investigators are putting so much focus on him, at first he weakly says, "I have not a clue." But then he proceeds to explain why.
So why do you think investigators are putting so much focus on you right now?
I have not a clue. I think it's because they said I was the last person to talk to her.
So for me, with the baseline responses that show when he's lying or is not confident in the answer, we can look at how he answers whether he had anything to do with the murders. And his answer strikes me as honest. So we're left at this point with some mysteries. My impression is that the police feel confident they have their man and that he acted alone. I could be wrong in that. Maybe the police are still looking closely at Kegan Kline. Maybe Richard Allen had an accomplice or accomplices. These cases usually involve a single killer, a lone predator. But maybe this will be one of those exceptions to the rule. We know that Kline was transferred to the custody of state police this past August for a brief time, so he was cooperating on something. We know they used tremendous police resources to search the river near Kline's house last month. It's possible that stuff has nothing to do with Delphi. Kline is awaiting trial on child porn and exploitation charges. And if Richard Allen did act alone, then it's important that we come to understand how it was that this Kline transcript was placed on an official website and what in that transcript was accurate and not accurate.